Well, when it comes to deliberate release of chemicals, I think many countries in the world now consider that that's a risk or a threat. And there are two categories of chemicals that might be used. There are chemical weapons, things like nerve agents, mustard agents, and those are not widely available. Some countries still have stores of those chemicals. Some terrorist groups may have expertise to develop those chemicals, but we're talking about really quite limited availability, and so the likelihood that those chemicals will be used is high in certain parts of the world and probably almost negligible in other parts of the world, I think. But we know, for instance, that in Syria, nerve agent was used because that was confirmed by OPCW investigation. So that's the chemical weapons. And then there are the toxic industrial chemicals, of which there are many, many. And those can also be released deliberately. And a very common chemical would be chlorine, because it's taken around the country in big tankers. It's used for water treatment, so it's a very easily available chemical, and it's a chemical that's, it's relatively easy to hijack a tanker and then shoot a few holes in it, and the chlorine gets released, and that's happened. So I guess the chlorine release is pretty obvious because you can smell chlorine, and the effects are very well recognised. I guess there's always the risk that it could be another chemical which was less well known, less obvious, and the first sign is that people start to become ill, and then you're wondering, well, what could this chemical be? That takes us back to the Angola situation in a way, that there are hundreds and hundreds of chemicals, and yes, it can be quite difficult to identify just from signs and symptoms alone. If a country has a poison centre, they should be going there and asking for the assistance of the toxicologists at the poison centre. There are also various databases on the internet that have information on chemicals, including the INCHEM database.
Yeah, before I talk about the INCHEM database, because we are talking here really about human health risk assessment of chemicals, we have a kind of flagship document, which is the WHO Human Health Risk Assessment Toolkit for chemicals. That leads the user through the full chemical risk assessment process, and can be used also for rapid risk assessments in emergency situations. This toolkit or document is available on the internet, on the WHO website, and from there we have about 100 links to resources. So, we have information about how chemicals are classified, whether they are toxic, moderately toxic, or less toxic, for example. We have information about the type of toxicological effects, but how to do exposure assessment, how to characterize the risks. And reference values are very important. So if we know that a soil, or let's say drinking water, is contaminated, we ask the question, is there a risk to the population who are consuming these waters? So this is a typical risk assessment question. And if we want to have a reference value below, that could be, this reference could be found also through that toolkit. We have, of course, other databases like the INCHEM database mentioned by Joanna before, which is much broader. In international chemical safety data sheets, which are also very interesting in a chemical emergency context, because they give you information about chemicals in a very concise way. It's only one sheet, but it is very informative, and you can digest this information within a couple of minutes. It's very helpful in an acute emergency context.
And they're multilingual.
It's multilingual, not only UN languages, but many other languages. So, but we have also other databases. We have produced something where all international organizations who have chemical safety activities. As I mentioned before, it's a multi-sectoral issues. And so we have 10 international players who are having chemical safety programs. And they're bringing their documents all into one place. IOMC, Inter-Organizational Program for the Sound Management of Chemicals. These are the 9 to 10 international organizations which coordinate their chemical safety work, among them WHO. And they have one website where they bring all their documents together. And there is a special scheme on chemical accident prevention, prevention, and response. So it's not only the information which is of interest to the health sector, but it's all the information produced by all international organizations for their different target audiences dealing with chemical emergency issues.
Just coming back to chemical weapons, I should also mention that we do have some specific guidance on management of chemical weapons exposure and the syndromes caused by chemical weapons on our Environmental Emergencies website in English and Arabic. With the Eastern Mediterranean region, our Centre for Environmental Health Activities in Jordan also has information in English and Arabic.